Is it pink? Is it purple? Is it any good? This is the Nebula 230 and we're going to find out. So FuriBee are at it again with yet another model. This time it's the FuriBee Nebula 230. Quite a big quad and quite a nice change actually, because we are getting a lot of small models entering the market at the moment, and it is nice to have something a bit more substantial. Now there is one thing about this that I'm unsure about at the moment. That is the colour. Because it's kind of a weird purpley maroon type colour, which is not going to appeal to everybody. Now that's the quad. You also get a set of spare props, which are also kind of a red kind of colour. I'm not sure if perhaps who designed this, maybe they're a little bit colourblind because they don't really go together, these various colours. But anyway, let's have a little closer look at this quad. Sorry, just to add, it does actually come with an antenna. It dropped out of the box when I was unpackaging it, so at least it does come with one extra accessory. So unlike some of the other quads, what you've seen in the box there literally is it. You get nothing else, just spare props and the props fitted already to the quad. Now this one comes in at about £100 or just over $100. This one is also with the included FrSky receiver, which is quite nice. It's bundled inside the main stack there. Now being a 230 quad, obviously there's a lot more space in here to fit the components, and it does actually seem like quite a nicely made quad, nice and strong. So looking at the arms of the quad, rather than having a fully carbon fibre built frame, it looks like it's laminated or a composite of some sort, possibly with a carbon top and bottom on there. The main internal central elements look to be about 1.5, perhaps 2 mil carbon fibre, and that's all protecting the flight controller and the other elements inside. Talking about the elements inside, we have got an F4 omnibus stack inside. That is also incorporating an inbuilt OSD and other nice features as well. You can see we've got the USB port on the side there. There's also an SD card slot underneath that. Now don't get too excited, that's unfortunately not part of the VTX, and I believe it's to capture logs from the onboard black box. So that's a shame. But yeah, in there also is an integral VTX with a 40 channel transmitter. It's a 25mm switchable up to 300 milliwatts as well, so a few different options there. The VTX on this one's connected to this little camera, which is a 700 TVL CMOS camera, unfortunately. 2.8mm lens there. Not much to say about that lens. It doesn't look particularly glorious. But hey, we'll see during the flight test if it's any good. The camera is tiltable as well, and there's quite a nice range of tilt from ridiculous angles all the way down to actually an inverted negative. So that would make some interesting flying. It doesn't have an all-in-one speed controller board, and so the individual speed controllers are mounted onto the tops of each of the arms. I don't particularly like that, but at least they are on the top, not on the bottom, and one benefit is they're easy to replace if you do happen to blow one of those. They're heat shrinked as well with clear heat shrink, so that gives a little bit of added protection. And they lead onto the motors, which on this we've got 2205, 2600 kV brushless motors, so nice and fast as well, not your regular 2300s. And you get some 5042 props which ship with this, and as I mentioned, you do get 4 spares as well. Worth noting that this doesn't come with a battery or anything else actually, but pretty much everything you need ready to fly is there. This one does have the bundled receiver, and inside there we have an FrSky non-diversity receiver, unfortunately. And so you can see we've got the individual antenna just sticking out the rear here a bit clumsily. Don't quite like that. That certainly needs fixing up on a tie wrap or similar to keep it out of the way of the props. On the back we've got the antenna for the VTX, and I can't quite see without taking this apart, but it looks like there is a little, that is basically a pigtail connection onto the main board where it appears to be soldered in place, unfortunately not a plug. On the rear of the quad we've got 4 little LEDs here and also a buzzer, so at least it is equipped with the features that we like to see on modern quads these days. There's also of course an XT60 connector on the rear, so that's good for catering with the high voltage batteries that we're going to be sticking onto this. On the underside of the quad, nice and clean actually, although there are no recessed screws here, but for the price you can't really expect that. You get a battery tie as well already installed, which is good because I hate installing doing those myself. I find it very fiddly. Now this does cater for a 4S battery, and that's what we'll be testing it in the flight test. But the next thing we're going to do is get the receiver bound with our transmitter, and then we will set it up in BetaFlight in preparation for the flight test. Now let's take a look in BetaFlight, and it's been quite an adventure with this quad. First of all, I'm actually running 3.3.0 now. It came shipped with 3.1.7, and I found some receiver issues with the receiver that was shipped with it. It's an XM, not an XM Plus, and I found that when I bound the receiver to this quad, there was loads of lag in the inputs here. So literally pressing the roll or pushing the pitch resulted in it kind of moving a little bit like that, if you can see it. Luckily, thanks to Andy RC, he guided me and told me the error of my ways, which was to have bound the XM with channels 1 to 8 rather than 1 to 16. Now, apparently increasing that does introduce some minor receiver lag, but this is due to a firmware issue with the XM receiver. So what you need to do on your Taranis, when you go to the bind settings for your receiver, you need to make sure that when you select the D8 protocol, below that you need to change the channels from 1 to 16. It will default from 1 to 8, and that should solve your lagging issue. Part of it as well was to upgrade BetaFlight to 3.3.0. That seems to have fixed it and got everything working. Next, modes, and we have nothing configured here. So we're going to be adding arm, angle, horizon, anti-gravity, beeper, and of course air mode. So not a lot really. First thing we're going to do is assign our arm switch. We've got that on auxiliary 1, so we're going to slide that up accordingly. Next we've got our mode switches, and we're going to set those onto aux 2, also anti-gravity. So angle mode obviously is going to be our first switch setting. Then we're going to have horizon in the middle, and I'm going to have anti-gravity triggering on horizon mode. And also then for rate mode, of course, we will stretch out the anti-gravity. Finally, for the beeper, we're going to put that onto aux 3, and we're going to have that on the far extent up there, like that. I'm actually also going to add an OSD disable switch. I kind of like that, the ability to turn the OSD on and off. I'm going to put that on the same switch as my buzzer so that position 2 will turn off the OSD. And finally, air mode, of course, is going to span horizon mode and rate mode. Click save, and the quad takes all that acceleration in, and we're all happy with that. Obviously, this uses the BetaFlight OSD, which is really nice, and I've got only warnings enabled here. I will mess around with some of these later on. I'm not going to spend that time now. And then finally, LED strip is configured, and this does have LEDs on the rear. And of course, that means it's now time for the test flight. But that will be in part 2, so click that subscribe button now so that you don't miss it. In the meantime, give us a comment below whether you liked this quad or not, and please click thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching.